Hello everybody, my name is Barry Johns. I'd like to welcome you back to another edition of Studio Talk. Today I'm going to walk you through not only how I process my voice for streaming, aka YouTube, you watching me right now, but also why I do what I do. Now this is an ever-evolving process. You know, I find that processing voiceover type audio is somewhat different. It's more than somewhat. It's a lot different than like processing a vocal for a song. Because you're solo, you're all by yourself, and there's a little bit of quirks in there to try to get the best of it. This is a process that is in constant evolution for me. I'm always tweaking this and tweaking that to try to make subtle improvements along the way, just like I would hope all of you would in your mixing strategy or in your recording strategy, no matter what you're doing. Now, if you're curious, I happen to be recording this. My microphone is an MKH 50 that I got from Sweetwater. And the mic preamp I'm using is simply the mic preamp on my RME UFX Plus. It's a very clean, very pristine mic pre, especially for an interface. I don't really want color on my voice, and I also don't use any of this analog gear along the way because I've made the mistake of recording videos and did too much compression or to this, and it's really hard to go back and change that. So anyway, so I do everything in the box, okay? So I'll show you one little trick out of the gate that's, because the way I have to record not only my voice when I do a video, but also be able to do playback. I use two different DAWs and I utilize RME's Total Mix to help me route that through some virtual channels. So hopefully you find that interesting. So sit back, kind of give this a chance and watch through it, and let's get to it. But actually remember that subscribe to the channel. I appreciate it. It really helps me grow, and I do a lot of work for you guys. I'm actually doing this right now at 5:30 a.m. in the morning, which is why these eyes are baggy, I'm sure. But let's get to the video. All right, so let's go through that routing. Here I am in New Window. This is a voiceover track that we're going to be looking at. This is from a previous video that I did. So if I go up to my audio connections up here, you're going to see where typically my stereo out would be my audio 1 and 2 on my RME UFX 2. And so I've chosen kind of what I call a virtual I/O, and that is because my unit has MADI, and I also have my Pulse 16 connected via MADI. I have up to 64 channels of MADI. So even though I don't have a physical connection assigned to MADI 35 and 36, I can still route things through what they call Total Mix. So let me show you that real quick. So here I'm going out 35, 36. If I go over into Total Mix, which comes with all RME interfaces, you'll see MADI 35 and 36 right here. So if I go back to New Window, and let me just close that out, and I hit play in here. You're set on plugins. You've done some room treatment in your room, and you've gotten yourself a nice set of monitors. You know, the core station. You could see whether that output was coming MADI 35 and 36. So a problem that I get is because I also need to be able to record the voiceover you're hearing right now, as well as the playback, and I can't do all that in one DAW. Effectively. I know Reaper's got the ability to run two side by side that I am interested in checking out, but for right now this works fantastic. So if I go over to Studio One as an example, you can see where right here it's recording my my voice as I'm talking right now, and this is where I played just a second before. So here in this channel right here, we've got New Window coming in, okay, and then here we've got my voice right now. So if I go over back to New Window and I hit play and come back over to Studio One, plugins. You've done some room treatment in your room, and you've gotten yourself a nice set of. Okay, so you could see there where it was coming through in this particular channel, and you can see that where once I go over to my audio setup, you're going to see my inputs. New Window, if I scroll on over, is going to be MADI 35 and 36, and right there that is. And so by doing this, I'm able to get the audio out of New Window into Studio One from the voiceover that I'm going to be demonstrating, and yet still record my voice at the same time. And so I'm also going to be able to record whatever effects I change, whether I bypass plugins and everything like that when I hit play. So the actual audio you're going to see on the end video result is actually going to come out of Studio One, not New Window. So let's go back over to New Window. And now let's get into the nitty-gritty of what we're here to talk about. So let me get my control surface set up here. I'm just so used to using it. And so now we're going to go over here, and here is the sound of all the process. These are all the plugins that I have on this particular voiceover right here. Like I said before, that's from a previous video that I did. And so I'm going to let you hear kind of the before and after. Now, here's the thing. It's kind of hard to really do this without going through a whole lot, but it's obviously going to get louder. So I'll go back through and start bypassing plugins for a second because this has a limiter on it, bringing up the volume, but I'll let you hear the before and the after real quick. This is before processing. You're set on plugins. You've done some room treatment in your room, and you've gotten yourself a nice set of monitors. You know, the core fundamental aspect. Okay, now do the after. Of course, it's going to be louder. You're set on plugins. You've done some room treatment in your room, and you've gotten yourself a nice set of monitors. You know, the core Okay, now one of the things when you're putting out video for streaming, you want to try and be at what they call a -14 LFUS and or LUFS, I'm sorry. And so I use this particular meter within Nuendo to help me kind of navigate that. Now, one quick note about, you know, that -14, what you want to do is have an average of that. It's certainly okay to go over that, to have peaks over that, but you don't want to be too far under that. Otherwise, when people go from one video to the next, your volume will be much lower. So you really want to shoot for that integrated of a -14 LUFS as long as it sounds good, okay? All right, so real quick, I'm going to show you the plugins that I'm using here. It starts out first with this particular plugin from Isotope, and what this is it's a deep breath. It controls breathing in between when I stop, so you don't hear me go, now you probably just didn't hear that because it probably just worked, okay? So ultimately, it takes away those breaths out there and works great for that. And then, yes, I use a Waves plugin. Don't flame me now, but I have one Waves. I actually own a ton of Waves plugins, but this is the only one I use these days. And this is the NS1. And what this is a noise suppressor. Now, I don't need very much of this. I use very little of it, but that is a plugin that I use on my voice. And then here, I'm a huge fan of FabFilter. Here you can see a lot of notching, and we'll talk about that in a second. But ultimately, this is the first EQ that I use on my voice. And that's really to kind of get out there and do a high pass filter and then notch out some annoying frequencies that are just natural in my voice. And then coming up next after that, I have the FabFilter De-esser. Obviously, you know, I grew up in the South in the United States, so I tend to pronounce my S's pretty strongly. And this really comes into play and helps a lot there. Next up, you know, I'm using, and this is just to add a little minor stuff, processing and everything to it, but I use a soft tube, Pultec EQ, and you can see here where I'm basically dropping out the mids around 1.5K and giving a little bit of boost, just a little bit around 3K, and we'll go through that as I bypass each one. Then I'm back into another Pro Q3, where after all that processing, I'm still giving myself a little bit of bump at 124 Hertz. And then, of course, I finish out from there with an L2 limiter on it. And so this is also by FabFilter. If you don't own the FabFilter bundle, I cannot recommend highly enough that is something I strongly recommend, if you can afford it, to buy that. So let's kind of go through. I'm going to leave the L2 on it the whole time, so we're not seeing huge bumps in volumes. But let's just kind of go through and see what each one of these is doing for us. All right, so let's take a listen with everything, with only the L2 playing. You're set on plugins. You've done some room treatment in your room, and you've gotten yourself a nice set of monitors. You know, the core. Now, I want you to pay attention. Notice the breaths in between my voice where you can hear me breathing in. You're set on plugins. You've done some room treatment in your room, and you've gotten yourself a nice set. Okay, so that can be very annoying. So let's bring this plugin back up and let's activate it again, and you can kind of get a sense of what's going on. Now, after this is affecting the breath control, and like any plugin out there, you want to use these things gently. You do not want to overuse them. Otherwise, it will really destroy your audio. You're set on plugins. You've done some room treatment in your. Now, if you didn't notice, every time you see this drop here, that's when it's getting my breath and kind of taking that out. You're set on plugins. You've done some room treatment in your room, and you've gotten yourself a nice set of monitors. You know, the core. Okay, now you could say, Barry, why not just use a gate? A gate is not going to be as effective because this is targeting certain frequencies specifically. Let's output just the breaths alone and see what that sounds like. Okay, so you got a sense of that. So hopefully you can understand why this is so important if you're doing voiceover work, okay? So let's keep that going, and next let's go up to this one now. This one here is not going to ultimately have as dramatic of effect inside because I'm in a controlled environment with acoustic treatment in the space, but if I'm in outside places or other locations, this plugin really does a fantastic job. So let's kind of listen to this before and then after. Station. You're set on plugins. You've done some room treatment in your room, and you've gotten yourself a nice set of monitors. You know, the core fundamental aspects of having a quality home recording studio, you know, probably the biggest and most important things to purchase after that are the right microphone for you, as well as trying to pair that with an external microphone preamp depending on. So hopefully you can get the idea of what that kind of is doing ultimately to the voice. Okay, so next up, we're going to go to the Pro Q3, and let's listen to the before and after of that. Station. You're set on plugins. You've done some room treatment in your room, and you've gotten yourself a nice set of monitors. You know, the core fundamental aspects of having a quality home recording studio, you know, probably the biggest and most important things to purchase after that are the right microphone for you, as well as trying to pair that with an external microphone preamp depending on the microphone. So there's so many factors that you have. So this is tailored specifically to my voice. So obviously, you know, you're getting the effect of those notched out frequencies. Let's see where I'm doing that at. I'm notching out -4 at 116 hertz, again at 157, again at 377, a little bit at 636, a little bit at 1373, and just a tiny bit more at 2014. So that kind of works for my voice as an example. Now, real quick, let me kind of do this little test real quick. Let me mute this particular track, and let me add another one, and I'll just add an audio track real quick, and let's go over here. Let's get that out, and let's just bring this down and copy this down to here, okay? So now we're going to ignore that one. We're going to really kind of work on this one right here. So let's go back over here, and let's put a Q3 on this, and I can show you kind of what it is I'm trying to do there when I do that. So I'll start out here to do my low pass filter. We'll bring that down. Let's make that, I'm sorry, a high pass filter. There we go. And I bring that out. So let's say we're going to bring that. Let's listen to it, and I'll come over with it. Station. You're set on. Hell, let me copy this L2 over so we got some volume. Station. You're set on plugins. You've done some room treatment in your room, and you've gotten yourself a nice set of monitors. You know, the core fundamental aspects of having a quality home recording studio, you know, probably the biggest and most important things to purchase after that. Okay, now notice that I'm doing a boost. I'm actually going to go higher than that, but I'm doing a very narrow Q on it, and then I'm going to sweep the frequencies to see what kind of frequencies stand out that are annoying to me. So I'm going to start lower here, and we're just going to move it up and listen to it. Station. You're set on plugins. You've done some room treatment in your room, and you've gotten yourself a nice set of monitors. You know, the core fundamental aspects of having a quality home recording studio, you know, probably the biggest and most important things to purchase after that are the right microphone for you, as well as trying to pair that with an external microphone preamp depending on the microphone. So there's so many factors that you have to consider when weighing the differences. This is one area where it really is better, if you can, to go to a store and be able to kind of try out different microphones on the voice you're going to be recording. But I understand and I realize that most of you probably don't have access to a store like that that's really going to have a wide range. Oftentimes, if I'm looking and I'm planning a trip going somewhere, and maybe it'll take me through Nashville, or Chicago or LA or New York, somewhere along those lines, I'll probably plan a stop along the way and really have a list of gear that I want to try, whether I'm going to Vintage King's showroom as an example in either LA or in Nashville, and I believe New York. I can't remember if they're still in New York or not, but in Tennessee, in Nashville, they have a great place where you can really check out microphones. Or if you can find your way up to Sweetwater's campus up there, that's another great option. So you may want to consider those things for some of these things when you're trying them out. But all that said, there's a lot of people that make a common mistake. And they'll use as an example where someone else used a particular microphone that may be on the budget end of things, to record a famous artist as an example, whether that is, Michael Jackson recording a song with an SMB7. I have one. It happens to be sitting over my son's gaming computer. So if you notice there, what you started to get was a little more clarity and depth. It took out some of that woofiness and things like that. And that tends to be a very stylistic approach. Keep in mind, this is a process I am constantly working on. So let's go back over here. Let's get rid of that. Let's go ahead and come back over here, and let's just not show that anymore. So now we're back over here. So now we've got, like I said before, we got the Pro EQ playing, and then here, oops, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong thing. Somehow I ended up one in the middle. So here we've got our de-esser going, okay? And so let's take a listen to that. This is just pretty basic and simple. You're just trying to find the frequency range that works best for you. It looks like I think I'm going to need to adjust this a little bit. Let's listen to it. Oh, let's turn it on first. Well, let's listen to it before. Oh, we hit mute on it, so let's not do that. Station. You're set on plugins. You've done some room treatment in your room, and you've gotten yourself a nice set of monitors. Notice how those S's are really standing out. So let's work on that. Station. You're set on plugins. You've done some room treatment in your room, and you've gotten yourself a nice set of monitors. The core fundamental aspects of having a quality home recording studio. Probably the biggest and most important things to purchase after that are the right microphone for you, as well as trying to pair that with an external microphone preamp depending on the microphone. One of the things you want to watch very quickly with de-essers is you can destroy it if you overdo it, okay? So I'll kind of maybe show an extreme and maybe hopefully demonstrate that a little bit. Station. You're set on plugins. You've done some room treatment in your room, and you've gotten yourself a nice set of monitors. The core fundamental aspects of having a quality home recording studio. Probably the biggest and most important things to purchase after that. Okay, for me, a de-esser, you just want it to where it's doing its basic fundamental job and no more than that. Let's go over here to the Pultec EQ by Softtube. This is one of my favorite Pultec EQs. I prefer it over Universal Audio's, even though theirs is very good. I really like it. I think Waves' Pultec EQ is absolutely horrendous, but that's just my opinion. So let's kind of listen to the before and after that and see what we get. Station. You're set on plugins. You've done some room treatment in your room, and you've gotten yourself a nice set of monitors. The core fundamental aspects of having a quality home recording studio. Probably the biggest and most important things to purchase after that are, now if you notice in there, it sounds like it's getting a little bit more low end, but at the end of the day, there is no low end being peaked right here as an example. That's all the way down to 0. But I am doing a pretty significant dip at 1.5K, which of course is going to exaggerate the high end and the low end specifically, okay? And then I've got a little bit of bump on top of that at 3K, so you can see the difference there again before and after. Station. You're set on plugins. You've done some room treatment in your room, and you've gotten yourself a nice set of monitors. The core fundamental aspects of having a quality home recording. Now, one of the things you've really got to make sure you're looking out for when you're doing this type of thing is it's going to be listened to on all types of devices. All right, it's going to be listened to with earbuds, whether they're AirPods or some other manufacturers. It's going to be listened to with headphones. It'll be listened to on a TV for a lot of people. So there's a lot of different sources that people are going to listen to this. And just like when you're mastering your music, you want to make sure that you're doing it in a way that's going to translate well across multiple platforms. All right, so now let's go over here to the last EQ. This is really the third EQ in all of it. And let's see the difference. This is going to be a subtle difference, but let's listen to the before and after of adding this little bump here at 124 hertz. Station. You're set on plugins. You've done some room treatment in your room, and you've gotten yourself a nice set of monitors. You know, the core fundamental aspects of having a quality home recording studio, you know, probably the biggest and most important things to purchase after that are the right mic. Now, you wouldn't think that just a little plus 1.2, basically 1.3 dB at one particular frequency is going to make that much of a difference, but subtle changes can make a big difference. Now, let's go on to the thing that ultimately is what's going to help you get to that minus 14 LUFS that you want to get to for streaming purposes. All right, so I'm going to take this all the way down to 0, and we'll kind of bring it up. Now, one of the things that I try to do is never real. First, you have to do two things. You have to listen with your ears. If you over-limit, you can destroy it. Okay, even though you're not getting the level you want, if you over-limit, you can destroy it. Secondly, is I don't really want to be doing any gain reduction, really more than 3.5 dB, 4 at the max. I don't ever want to be doing that because that, to my ears, just doesn't sound good. So let's kind of start playing with it to see what we get. Station. You're set on plugins. You've done some room treatment in your room. Now notice we're starting out right here at basically a minus 24, 25 LUFs before we even get started. Let's reset that and start again. Station. You're set on plugins. You've done some room treatment in your room, and you've gotten yourself a nice set of monitors. You know, the core fundamental. Now I'm also paying attention to where I'm at there because I want to really try to get that fairly close to 0 dB without going over that. Station. You're set on plugins. You've done some room treatment in your room, and you've gotten yourself a nice set of monitors. You know, the core fundamental aspects of having a quality home recording studio, you know, probably the biggest and most important things to purchase after that are the right microphone for you, as well as trying to pair that with an external microphone preamp depending on the microphone. So there's so many factors that you have to consider when weighing the differences. This is one area where it really, okay, so for me, this is a good endpoint, okay? Like anything else, I'm constantly going to be searching for improvements that I can make along the way. I have found that processing voiceover work is so much different than processing vocals, as an example. Because when you're solo and you're the only one there, it's really a different learning curve altogether. And quite honestly, it can be a lot more complicated, at least to my mind. So hopefully that gives you an idea of kind of the process I go with doing my processing for my voiceover. All right, so I hope you found that interesting. If you have any questions or anything, put them in the comments down below. Have any recommendations or suggestions, put them in the comments down below. I'm always willing to learn and grow right along with all of you as we go through this journey together. So as I said in the beginning, if you like the things I talk about, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification and like button. It really helps me a lot. Leave some comments down below. Tell me what you think, as I already said. And until next time, I hope all of you have a great day. Bye-bye. Get some liquid courage in me right now. Look, I need it. Sometimes, Barry, you're just stupid. You know what I mean? You're just plain stupid. But I like my coffee, I gotta tell you. All right, let's hope I don't get too many dyslexic words in here and mispronounce things, because all my fans out there are going to rip me to shreds if I don't say Atmos correctly instead of Atomos. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, you know, I'm just a big old dummy. Anyway, here we go. Uh-oh. What happened there? We got the microphone in there? Oh, we can't have that microphone in there. We got to get it up there. That's better. I think that's better. for my YouTube channel. I'm not blah 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 blah.